Yeah, man, it was terrible. I knew I was madly in love with my wife. The minute I saw her, it was
Right.
kind of love at first sight. But getting to the altar was so tough.
Picture this. You're standing on stage in front of hundreds of Hollywood's biggest stars. The lights are blazing down on you. Everyone is waiting to hear your acceptance speech. You've just won one of the most important awards in the entertainment industry. This should be the happiest moment of your life, right? But instead of talking about your success, you drop a bombshell that leaves the entire room speechless. You tell everyone that you never actually want to become an actor. That's exactly what happened when Jeff Bridges, the man we all know as the dude from The Big Lebowski, finally told the truth that he'd been hiding for over 50 years. What Jeff revealed that night wasn't just shocking. It explained everything. Why he almost quit acting multiple times. Why he hid in garages to avoid his famous father. Why, even at 75 years old, his heart still races faster during filming than it did when he was fighting cancer. This is the story of a man who became one of Hollywood's most beloved actors despite never really wanting to be one at all. Jeff Bridges was born into a family where acting wasn't just a job. It was a family business. His parents were both actors, which meant that from the moment he took his first breath, he was surrounded by movie sets, bright lights, and cameras. When Jeff was just 6 months old, something happened that would seem funny if it wasn't so telling about his future. His parents brought him to the set of a movie, and the director needed a real crying baby for one scene. So his mom gave tiny Jeff a little pinch, and he cried right on cue. The scene was perfect, but on the studio records, they didn't even list his name. They just wrote crying baby. Looking back, that moment was like a prediction of Jeff's entire career. He would spend decades being exactly what directors needed him to be, even when it meant hiding who he really was inside. Even as a baby, he was already performing, already giving people what they wanted, even if it meant being uncomfortable. As Jeff grew up, his father, Lloyd Bridges, became more and more famous, especially after starring in a Western movie called High Noon. But Lloyd had mixed feelings about the acting business. He'd seen too many actors struggle to make a living. Too many people chase dreams that never came true. So one day, when Jeff was around 8 years old, Lloyd sat him and his older brother down for a serious talk. Lloyd pulled out some papers with numbers on them and showed his sons the hard truth about acting. He told them that most actors made less than $5,000 a year. That's not much money even back then, and it's definitely not enough to support a family. Lloyd was worried about his sons' futures, so he made a rule that would stay in their house for years. Jeff and his brother could only take acting jobs if their school grades were higher than AB+. Lloyd even suggested they think about becoming engineers instead of actors. This conversation planted a seed of doubt in Jeff's mind that would grow bigger and bigger as he got older. Maybe acting wasn't a stable job. Maybe it wasn't something he should count on. Maybe his father was trying to protect him from a world that could break his heart. When Jeff turned 13, something inside him rebelled against the path that seemed to be laid out for him. He didn't want to be known just as Lloyd Bridges' son. He didn't want people to assume he would follow in his father's footsteps. So he did something that might seem small, but was actually huge for a teenager. He took a marker and wrote 3 words on his bedroom door. Not an actor. Those 3 words were like a declaration of independence. Jeff was telling the world, and maybe more importantly telling himself, that he was going to be his own person. He started taking art classes and discovered he had real talent as a painter. He even sold his first painting for $35, which felt like a fortune to a 13-year-old. He also started a surf rock band called the Nozzles and played at small events around Santa Monica. While his older brother Bo was learning acting scripts and practicing monologues, Jeff was learning guitar chords and painting ocean scenes. His high school art trophies still sit in his studio today, a reminder of the path he thought he wanted to take. For Jeff, this was his teenage phase. It was a way of saying that he wanted to find something real and meaningful on his own terms, not just follow the easy path because his parents were famous. But growing up in Los Angeles in the 1960s meant being surrounded by more than just art and music. There were parties and drugs everywhere. By the time Jeff was 16, he was smoking marijuana before going to math class. During the summer when he was 18, He was trying LSD at music sessions up in Topanga Canyon, where a lot of musicians and artists lived. One night in September, everything changed. Police stopped Jeff while he was driving his Volkswagen Beetle, and they found marijuana in his car. Since he was still a minor, they called his father instead of arresting him. This scared the whole family. Jeff's mother, Dorothy, made him start going to counseling every week. His father personally drove him to 2 rehabilitation meetings that October. Jeff later said it felt like he was about to miss an important exit in his life. He was heading down a dangerous road, and his family was trying to help him turn around before it was too late. This was his first big wake-up call, the first time he realized that his choices had serious consequences. Instead of lecturing Jeff more about the dangers of drugs, his father, Lloyd, tried a different approach. One morning over breakfast, Lloyd said something clever that would change Jeff's perspective forever. He told Jeff that acting could be a way to do everything he wanted to do. Through acting, Jeff could fly jets, play music, paint, travel the world, and live 1,000 different lives without having joined the military or struggle as a starving artist. It was like having one job that could give him endless experiences. This idea really appealed to Jeff. It made acting sound like freedom instead of a trap. It made it sound like a way to explore the world instead of being stuck in one boring routine. Soon after this conversation, Jeff agreed to take a small acting role on his father's television show Sea Hunt. He partly did it just to earn enough money to buy a new guitar, but Lloyd's clever trick had worked. Jeff was starting to see acting as a possibility instead of a prison. But even after agreeing to try acting, Jeff didn't rush into Hollywood full-time. When he was 17, he made a decision that would slow down his acting career for years. He walked into a military office and signed up for the Coast Guard Reserve. This commitment lasted 8 years and kept him out of the Vietnam War, but it also meant he could only act during breaks from his military duties. Jeff spent his weekends cleaning rust-off buoys and working midnight shifts. He later said it felt like torture, but the schedule did give him enough time to film movies during his breaks. That's when he made The Last Picture Show and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, 2 movies that got him Oscar nominations. So there he was, wearing his military uniform during the week and chasing awards on weekends. During this time, Jeff also took a Greyhound bus to New York to study acting at a famous school. But even there, he was more interested in the music clubs and street art than in acting lessons. He brought his camera and spent time taking photos in subways and talking with musicians and painters. He would skip rehearsals to sneak into open mic nights at clubs. He only stayed a few months before returning home, but even that short time gave him something to tell his parents when they asked if he was serious about acting. Even after earning an Oscar nomination, Jeff almost walked away from acting completely. In 1972, he bought a beach house in Malibu and rented a studio in Venice, not to work on movies, but to make music and paint ocean scenes. He had no plans for a record deal or gallery shows. He just wanted space to breathe and create without pressure. He told his father he might skip making movies for a while. But then something interesting happened. Just when Jeff was ready to walk away, great acting roles started showing up. It was like the universe was testing him to see how serious he was about quitting. By 1973, Jeff's talk of leaving acting worried his whole family. They held a meeting in their living room to talk about his future. His mother, Dorothy, pulled out a notebook where she had carefully tracked all of Jeff's auditions and jobs. His father, Lloyd, reminded Jeff how acting could use all of his talents at once. Dorothy added that the family helped each other succeed, and they needed Jeff to keep working with them. A few days after this family meeting, Jeff said yes to a role in a film called The Iceman Cometh, even though he had already tried to turn it down. The director even visited Jeff's art studio to try to convince him to take the part. That small push brought Jeff back into the spotlight, but the internal struggle between what he wanted to do and what he felt he should do continued. Then in 1975, while filming a comedy called Rancho Deluxe in Paradise Valley, Montana, Jeff's life changed in a completely different way. One afternoon, he looked up and saw a woman walking to the dining room at the Chico Hot Springs Hotel. She had 2 black eyes and a freshly set nose from some kind of accident, but Jeff couldn't stop staring at her. He kept forgetting his lines during filming because he was so distracted between shots. He walked over and asked her to have dinner with him. She said no. Her name was Susan Jeston, and she was an economics student working at the hotel to earn money for school. She told him maybe she'd see him around since it was a tiny town. 3 nights later, they danced together at the movie's wrap party. It was awkward but sweet, and they didn't want to let go of each other. The next morning, they went looking at ranches by the river. Jeff still carries a photo from that day in his wallet. He says it's like a time machine that takes him back to the moment when he knew he'd found the person he wanted to spend his life with. In 1976, Jeff was cast in the King Kong remake, which had a budget of $24 million, making it the most expensive movie ever made at that time. The movie was a huge success, making over $90 million worldwide. But that success came with a price that Jeff hadn't expected. He was locked into interviews, commercials, and contract talks for almost 2 years. He once joked that the giant monkey in the movie didn't just grab the girl, it grabbed his bank account and wouldn't let go. During all this chaos, Susan had been by his side, watching Jeff struggle with fame and success. One day she looked at him and said something that hit him like a lightning bolt. She told him, "I'm going to have children and put down roots either with you or without you." This wasn't an ultimatum exactly, but it was a clear statement about what she wanted from life. Jeff spent several days thinking about whether getting married and settling down meant giving up his freedom. He even called his brother Beau in tears, unsure about what to do. Finally, he drove Susan to a windy beach and pulled out a turquoise ring from his jeans. He proposed to her right there, and they got married just 5 days later in a small backyard ceremony. Jeff later said that Susan's words saved him because without them, he might have kept drifting through life until everything fell apart. Instead, he remembered that feeling he had in Paradise Valley and the way it made him want to build something real and lasting. The morning after their first dance at that wrap party, Jeff and Susan had toured an old farmhouse near the Yellowstone River. Jeff said he heard a voice inside his head telling him, "Don't let this place or this woman get away." In 1979, he bought 320 acres outside Livingston, Montana, and built a simple cedar cabin with no phone, so movie studios couldn't reach him. Jeff admitted to reporters that he would sometimes skip auditions to go paint and fish in Montana. His agent called it career suicide. Jeff even started asking for huge fees on purpose, hoping studios would back off and stop offering him roles. Instead, they kept sending him bigger and better offers. That cabin became Jeff's way to breathe when Hollywood got too overwhelming. When things got too loud and stressful, he would escape to Montana, fix fences, sit by the river, and disappear for weeks at a time. But even there, he felt the pull of his family's expectations. His father, Lloyd, had over 150 movie and TV credits by this point. He told reporters he never pressured his sons to act, but when Jeff started turning down big roles, Lloyd called it a waste of talent. That comment really hurt Jeff because his father had always been supportive before. Movie Industry magazine said Jeff was right on the edge of becoming a major star if he would just commit fully to acting. So Jeff made a deal with himself. He would take serious acting roles, but only if he could go back to Montana between movies to recharge and remember who he was outside of Hollywood. One of those serious roles was in a movie called Tron in 1981. Jeff was 31 years old, standing in front of something he didn't understand at all. The movie used computer effects that seemed like science fiction at the time. Even Disney's animators didn't want to work on it because they were scared computers would take their jobs. The Academy Awards refused and nominated for visual effects because they said using computers was cheating. Jeff was genuinely nervous during filming. He even asked the director if computers could replace actors too someday. What you see in the movie, his tight, worried expression, that wasn't really acting. He was actually scared about what the future might hold. He later joked that Tron made him look over his shoulder every time he saw a computer screen. In 1984, Jeff faced a different kind of challenge with a movie called Starman. He had to play an alien who was learning to move and act like a human. To prepare for this role, Jeff had to erase all his normal human habits. No leaning against walls, no slouching, no blinking without thinking about it. He studied dancers to learn how to move in completely new ways, and he spent 115 days of filming slowly becoming more human on screen. Critics loved his performance, and he got another Oscar nomination. But after the movie was finished, Jeff didn't feel like himself anymore. He had spent so long pretending to be someone else that he had forgotten who the real Jeff Bridges was. He started going to therapy once a week in Santa Monica for almost a year, just trying to find himself again. This experience scared Jeff because it showed him how deeply acting could affect his sense of identity. It wasn't just putting on a costume and saying lines. It was actually changing who he was inside, and that felt dangerous. In 1985, Jeff made a movie called Jagged Edge with Glenn Close that included some steamy romantic scenes. The tabloid magazines ran pictures from the movie, and Susan wasn't happy about it. After watching Jeff flirt with other actresses on screen for 10 years of marriage, this movie crossed a line for her. She told him, "One more part like that, and I'm done." Friends said dinners at home got tense during this time. People would make jokes about the movie that Susan didn't find funny. Jeff later admitted that this film almost broke the peace in his marriage. It showed him that his career choices didn't just affect him. They affected the people he loved most. Around this same time, while filming a movie called Against All Odds in Mexico, Jeff was often alone and dealing with a lot of pressure. Reporters were comparing him to famous actors like Paul Newman and Robert Redford, which made him feel like he had to live up to impossible expectations. The stress got so bad that Jeff started drinking heavily. In a 2011 interview, Jeff finally admitted that during this period, he was drinking tequila almost every night and staying up late. One magazine writer even saw him get sick during an interview because he had been drinking so much. Jeff said this was the moment when drinking stopped being fun and started controlling his schedule and his life. Then came The Fabulous Baker Boys, a movie that was cast in early 1988. Jeff asked for time before filming to learn how to play jazz piano, secretly hoping that if acting didn't work out, he could switch to being a musician instead. He woke up at 5 in the morning for piano lessons and worked incredibly hard to learn the music. But when the movie came out on October 13th, 1989, it was a huge success. Jeff got 2 Oscar nominations, and critics loved his performance. Instead of giving him an exit from acting like he had hoped, the movie's success locked him even deeper into the Hollywood world. Jeff later laughed about how his piano lessons were supposed to be his escape plan, but they backfired one chord at a time. In the summer of 1990, Jeff found himself working with Robin Williams on a movie called The Fisher King. Robin was famous for improvising and changing his lines during filming, sometimes doing 20 different versions of the same scene. Jeff never knew what was coming next, which made him feel completely out of control. One night, while filming in New York, Robin launched into a wild 3-minute speech about medieval knights that wasn't in the script at all. Jeff froze up completely. He couldn't find his cue or figure out how to respond. At 2:15 in the morning, he walked off the set, found a payphone, and called his wife Susan. He told her he felt so shaken that he might need to talk to a therapist. The movie studio actually paid for Jeff to have an emergency therapy session on July 27, 1990. In 60 years of acting, it was the only time Jeff ever charged therapy sessions to a film's budget. This shows just how much the unpredictability of working with Robin Williams had affected him. 8 years later, in March 1998, The Big Lebowski hit theaters. It didn't make much money at first, but by 2002, something strange started happening. Midnight showings of the movie were packed with fans who would shout the lines back at the screen. Jeff thought this was funny at first, but then things got really weird. On April 20th, 2005, someone started a joke religion called Dudism based on Jeff's character in the movie. Within 10 years, it had over 600,000 people who called themselves ordained priests of this fake religion. At events in Los Angeles, people would line up asking Jeff to bless their White Russian cocktails, which was a drink his character loved in the movie. Jeff later admitted the whole thing freaked him out. He said it was flattering that people loved the character so much, but some fans acted like he actually lived his real life in that bathrobe from the movie. After 2008, he stopped going to Big Lebowski festivals because strangers would try to follow him into restrooms, looking for wisdom from the dude. When the DVD came out in 1999, Jeff's 3 daughters weren't impressed with their father's new fame. Suddenly their friends had "The Dude Abides" stickers all over their school lockers. At dinner one night, Jeff's daughters gave him a handwritten list titled, "Why It's Weird You're Famous." They told him that kids at school teased him about his swearing in movies, and they begged him to get a regular desk job like other dads. Jeff kept that note from his daughter for years. In a 2014 interview, he showed it to a reporter and said his toughest critics were always at home. This was another reminder that his career affected his entire family, not just him. In 2009, Jeff almost turned down the role that would finally win him an Oscar. Crazy Heart told the story of a broken-down country singer named Bad Blake, and Jeff said no at first. He was tired of playing damaged, troubled characters. The director begged him for weeks before Jeff finally agreed, but only if he could sing his own songs in the movie. The film cost $7 million to make and earned almost $40 million. It won 40 major awards, and Jeff said just thinking about it still gave him chills. That moment when he almost said no to his Oscar-winning role haunted him. One reluctant yes had changed everything. At the 2010 Academy Award ceremony, when Jeff finally held that golden statue, something inside him seemed to break free. He thanked his late parents, and his voice cracked with emotion. He called acting a groovy profession, but the words didn't sound like a rehearsed speech. They felt real and honest. To most people watching, that moment looked like pure joy. But for those who knew Jeff well, it sounded like relief. After 40 years of struggling with whether he belonged in Hollywood, he was finally at peace with his career choice. But even winning an Oscar didn't completely erase his doubts. Later that same year, the Coen brothers offered him the lead role in True Grit, playing a character originally made famous by John Wayne. Jeff said no, not just once, but 3 times. The idea of following in John Wayne's footsteps scared him. The Coen brothers promised they weren't remaking the 1969 John Wayne movie. They were adapting the original book, which was different. That convinced Jeff to take the role, and after filming, he admitted that turning them down initially had been one of the biggest mistakes he could have made. The film earned 10 Oscar nominations, and critics loved his darker version of the character. Throughout his career, Jeff had been quietly working on projects that had nothing to do with acting. In 1994, he had bought the rights to make a movie called The Giver because he wanted his father Lloyd to play the lead role. But studios didn't believe in the project. They said teenagers wouldn't want to watch a movie where the main character was an older man. Jeff didn't give up on the project. He rewrote the script 18 times and worked with 4 different directors. By the time Harvey Weinstein finally agreed to fund the movie in 2013, Jeff himself had aged into a role that was originally meant for his father. He smiled and said that waiting had given him the right number of wrinkles for the part. When The Giver was finally released on August 15th, 2014, after 7,319 days of development, it earned $12.3 million in its opening weekend. It wasn't a blockbuster, but for Jeff, it represented both an ending and a new beginning. He had finally made the movie he dreamed of for 20 years. But Jeff's life wasn't just about making movies. Back in 1983, when he was 34, he started a nonprofit organization called End Hunger Network. While people saw him as a movie star, he was quietly working to fight child hunger in America. In 2010, he stood at the National Press Club and said that nearly 17 million kids in the United States were going to bed hungry every night. Jeff called this work his penance for always complaining about Hollywood problems while children had no food. Over 40 years, his organization helped push through 5 major nutrition bills in Congress. In 2015, he even released an ambient music album called Sleeping Tapes and donated all $80,000 it earned to No Kid Hungry. Even during movie promotions, Jeff would stay behind to meet with lawmakers and talk about summer meal programs for kids who didn't have access to school lunches. He once joked that his Oscar made a terrible soup spoon, but his real passion was making sure no child went hungry. But Jeff's quiet fight to help others wouldn't prepare him for what hit in October 2020. That month, at age 70, he posted a simple tweet that shocked his fans. He had been diagnosed with follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a type of blood cancer. The tumor in his abdomen was 9 inches by 12 inches, which is enormous. He had been losing weight and feeling exhausted for months, but he thought it was just stress from the pandemic that was affecting everyone. He started chemotherapy right away, going through 6 rounds of treatment combined with antibody therapy. He also meditated every day to try to stay calm during this frightening time. After 11 months of treatment, the tumor had shrunk to just 2 centimeters. In August 2021, his doctor said it was the size of a marble. A month later, Jeff announced he was in full clinical remission, which means the cancer was essentially gone. But during his treatment, things got much worse. In January 2021, halfway through his 4th round of chemotherapy, Jeff caught COVID-19. His immune system was already weakened from the cancer treatment, so the virus hit him incredibly hard. Within days, his oxygen levels crashed and he was rushed to the intensive care unit in Santa Barbara, where he stayed for 5 weeks. Jeff's lungs were so damaged that he could only stand up for 45 seconds at a time, without getting out of breath. Nurses helped him build up his strength little by little. First, he learned to sit up in bed, then to walk 5 feet, then gradually more and more. He lost 35 pounds and most of his hair during this period. Doctors later said that getting the COVID vaccine earlier might have saved his life. Jeff said that having cancer had felt easier than dealing with the virus, but the whole experience made him realize how fragile life really is. While he was stuck in a COVID ward, unable to do much of anything, Jeff asked a nurse to bring him 2 shoe boxes full of old letters. They were letters from his mother, Dorothy, who had passed away years earlier. One night, as he read them alone, he discovered something that completely shocked him. His parents' marriage, which had lasted 58 years and had always seemed perfect to Jeff, had nearly ended in 1969. His father, Lloyd, had left to film a Western movie and had actually filed early divorce papers. Jeff had never known about any of this. The letters showed anger, frustration, and pain, but they also showed a quiet healing that started with a single postcard that said, "Let's try again for the kids." Jeff had been married to Susan for 43 years by the time he read these letters. He had always thought his parents had a perfect love story, but now he saw the truth. Even the strongest marriages go through difficult times. He started talking more openly with Susan about money, fear, and gratitude. He said those letters from his mother reset his compass and helped him appreciate what he had. But healing from cancer and COVID came with a huge financial cost. Jeff's hospital bills reached over $3 million, which he hadn't planned for, to keep his union health insurance. He needed to work again. So he went back to filming The Old Man, a thriller for FX that had started production in early 2020, but had been paused because of the pandemic, and then paused again after Jeff's cancer diagnosis. When filming resumed in October 2021, Jeff still needed an oxygen concentrator to help him breathe. He could only shoot scenes for 45 seconds at a time before needing to rest. The set that he had once feared became the very thing that helped pay for his recovery. When The Old Man finally premiered on June 16, 2022, critics praised his tired, authentic performance. It wasn't acting anymore, it was surviving. Then came April 29, 2024. Jeff stood on stage at Alice Tully Hall in a tuxedo to accept the 49th Chaplin Award, one of the most prestigious honors in the entertainment industry. But instead of giving the usual grateful acceptance speech, he stunned everyone in the audience. He said, "I never actually want to become an actor." People in the audience froze. You could have heard a pin drop. He shared how as a teenager, he would have panic attacks when his father asked him to rehearse scenes. He told the story of how he once hid in the garage for 2 hours, hoping his dad would forget about the scene they were supposed to practice together. Jeff read from his old journal entries, sharing thoughts he had written as a young man. Acting feels like wearing someone else's skin, itchy and wrong. For 6 full seconds, the room was completely silent. Then came applause. Long, loud applause that seemed to go on forever. Even now, as Jeff approaches his 75th birthday, the fear hasn't left him. In March 2025, while filming the new Tron movie called Tron Ares, his heart rate hit 148 beats per minute. That's higher than what it reached during his chemotherapy treatments. He still wakes up at 4 a.m. on filming days, worried that he'll forget how to act. He told reporters recently, "The fear is louder than the tumors ever were." And he meant every word of it. After more than 50 years in Hollywood, after winning an Oscar, after surviving cancer and COVID, Jeff Bridges is still the same person who wrote "Not an Actor" on his bedroom door when he was 13 years old. This is the truth that Jeff Bridges finally share with the world. He never wanted to be an actor. Every role, every performance, every moment on screen has been a struggle against his own deepest instincts. He became one of the most beloved actors of his generation, despite fighting against it every step of the way. His story shows us that sometimes the things we're best at aren't the things we thought we wanted to do. Sometimes our greatest contributions to the world come from wrestling with our fears instead of running away from them. Jeff Bridges spent his entire career feeling like he was wearing someone else's skin, but in the process, he created characters and performances that millions of people will treasure forever. The man who never wanted to be an actor became an actor we never want to lose. And maybe that's the most beautiful irony of all. Sometimes our reluctant heroes are the most authentic ones because they never stop questioning whether they deserve to be there. They never took their success for granted because they never felt like it was guaranteed. Jeff Bridges taught us that you can spend your whole life feeling like an imposter and still create something genuine and meaningful. You can be afraid and still be brave. You can doubt yourself and still inspire others. Sometimes the people who touch our hearts the most are the ones who never felt entirely comfortable in the spotlight, but stayed there anyway because they had something important to give. If Jeff Bridges' incredible story of reluctant stardom, personal struggle, and ultimate authenticity has moved you as much as it moved me, please hit that like button and share this video with your friends and family. Stories like this remind us that even our heroes are human, and sometimes that makes their achievements even more remarkable. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about the real people behind the fame. Sometimes the most beautiful performances happen when someone is just trying to be honest about who they really are